This episode of the Closeout Bodyboarding podcast is proudly presented to you by Bodyboarding Victoria and Limited Edition Fins. Shane, I've always wanted to know, what's the big difference between the original Limited Edition fins and the new Psylocke fins?
Benny, the Psylocke fins are bigger and wider than the original LE foot pockets. So basically when you try them on, they'll actually be a size up. Psylocke's fit really well in half sizes to the original fins. So I used to not be able to fit into the larges in the original LE fins, but I fit perfectly into the Psylocke large. So I just recommend everyone, if you weren't comfortable in the original LEs, go in and try on a new Psylocke's.
Awesome. Thanks, Shane. Back to you in the studio. Welcome to the Closeout Bodyboarding podcast, where typically three good mates sit around and talk about some of the current topics going down with the sport that we can't get enough of. However, I've hijacked the podcast gear and headed north to Sydney on a bit of a family road trip to catch up with a few good mates and, essentially hear some of their stories. In hindsight of this, I will be your only host. It's me again, Benny Oborn, and joining me is managing partner of Chandler Executive Consulting, former president, treasurer, secretary, and trailer keeper of Sydney Bodyboard Club, former CEO of the Australian Bodyboarding Association, and only a handful of individuals that I know to have surfed both wave pools here in Australia. Nick Chandler, welcome to the podcast.
G'day, Benny. How are you?
I'm really good, mate.
G'day, viewers.
Shame you couldn't have caught up with us last weekend for my 40th, but This is the next best thing.
Yeah, I was overseas and had only just got back in the country, so it was kind of hard to convince the family that I should go on another trip. But anyway, you were up here, so here we are.
Mate, before we get stuck into it, I want to hear about your Euro trip. Obviously, you've told me most of it, but didn't go as planned.
No, didn't go as planned. It wasn't meant to be a surf holiday, but we did get surf there. So I went to France first, surfed Biarritz, Hossegor, Caperton, went down into the Basque Country. I don't want to say too much, but there's really good waves in Spain, if you care to look. Went back to Ericeira. Louis Finnegan told me to go to Ericeira. It was a good call. Got waves there. All kinds of beaches, reefs, that sort of thing. Found myself in Morocco. But before that, I actually got to Ericeira, got sick, got a kidney infection, and flew to Madeira Island thinking I was okay, and I wasn't okay. And went downhill pretty fast and found myself in hospital in Portugal for 2 weeks. Yeah, that wasn't the holiday trip that I was planning. Yeah, I was sick for about a month, basically. And so I got out of hospital after lots of Euros and lots of antibiotics. Went to Porto in the north of Portugal to get a bit well, and then flew to Morocco. And spent about 3 weeks in Morocco, then came back, went to Nazaré, surfed Nazaré on the way home, did Italy as well, did lots of non-surfing things, but we're kind of on a surfing podcast, so, I got to surf Nazaré, not at 80 feet, at 5 feet. There's lots of memorabilia at Nazaré, and it's kind of it treats bodyboarding the same as surfing. So there's...
Correct me if I'm wrong, there's a museum. Is that in Nazaré, and one of Mike's boards is on the wall?
One of Mike's boards is, and there's 3 other boards from 3 other bodyboarders who've won contests at Nazaré.
Yeah, amazing.
A couple of local guys and a girl. Yeah, they've got a whole range of boards that are sitting in that fort that you see in the foreground of most of
pretty much every shot of Nazaré ever printed.
Yep. And it's a nice shrine to surfing there, and it's nice to see that bodyboarding's represented in I guess in an equivalent fashion to surfing. So.
And one of my good friends, who now essentially a digital mutual friend to both of us, is Rui.
Yeah.
He pointed you in the right direction for a few little hookups over there.
Yep. Yeah. So I didn't know very much about surfing in Portugal, and you'd met Rui, and we started a WhatsApp chat together, and I mentioned to him that Louis had told me I should maybe go...
Speed dating, essentially.
It was like speed dating. Yeah, he was a great date. Gave me lots of info. He told me to go to his hometown for about a week through the trip, which was excellent. It was great waves. Met one of his friends who's actually a chemical engineer from Norway, who would come and pick me up in a Toyota Hilux every morning and take me down to this wedge. And we became fast friends and surfed every day for a week. whilst I was there. And then I flew back and met the rest of the family and went down to Sagres to the southern tip of Portugal, surfed the very southern tip of Europe, and also earlier on had surfed the very northern tip of Africa at Tangier. So
Not your surf trip to Africa, but we'll get to that later.
yeah. Yes. No, that was another one. Yeah. It was a great trip. So, I loved it. Had 4.5 months over there, worked while I was there. And then got back about, I don't know when that was, about less than a month ago.
And just to clarify, full family holiday, by the way.
Yeah.
Fee, all of the kids were there.
Two
at
of the
some stage?
kids. So I've got 4 kids, but 2 came, and then the other 2 came and met us whilst we were there, because we had significant birthdays while we were there, so they came over for those.
Well, that probably is a great, lead into the first question of our discussion points. Mate, tell us a bit about yourself. Where do you live? I'd love to actually elaborate on where we're sitting right now. What do you do?
We're sitting in a garage.
Yeah, tell us about your family.
I was born on the Northern Beaches. My parents moved down to Melbourne, where I learnt the right code of football, apparently, and then moved back to Sydney. I was a long-suffering Richmond supporter, but then when you move back to Sydney in the early days, you could pretty much only watch Sydney, so they became my kind of second team. And then we moved to a North Shore suburb, so I wasn't really close to the beach when I was sort of 10, 12 years old. And so I'd have to get the bus down to the beach. And the first beach I got to was Dee Why, so I surfed Dee Why quite a lot. Then once I got into my late teens, I found Coco, and it was just a more consistent beach. And I just thought to myself, if I can try and work out a way to get a job to live somewhere like this, I should be doing okay. I rented a house with 4 or 5 other guys. Yeah, it was a standard boys' house. Went out a lot, drank a lot of beer, all that sort of stuff. And I could see Coco from my bedroom window for $80 a week. It was magic.
I wonder what that property's worth now, if it still exists.
Yeah. It's been, the guy who owned it still owns it. And, he knocked that house down and has built this big Spanish hacienda. And, it's lovely. It was a good entree. So I got to see Coco every day, basically, whilst I was growing up, going through uni, doing all that sort of stuff. And I just thought if I could find a way to buy a house somewhere nearby, then I was doing okay. And that's what I did.
So going back a step, obviously uni, that's a, you in your early adult years then. Mm-hmm. Where were you studying? What were you studying?
I did 2 years of law and I never really wanted to do that. I just got in. So after 2 years, I then shifted.
What a curse, right? Getting into law.
Yeah, tough. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it just wasn't my thing, really. But what I really wanted to do was social science. I found a course that I liked, and it seemed to be about people and behaviour and understanding people and behaviour. And so I spent 3 years doing that at Uni New South Wales. And I spent 4 actually, because I broke 2 vertebrae in my, I think it was 3rd year of uni. So I had to do another year.
How'd that happen?
Bodyboarding at Coco.
No way.
I
don't think you've ever told me this.
Yeah, haven't I?
No.
Oh, on a pretty innocuous day.
Yeah, always the story.
Yeah, just, travelling along, I'd say the wave was probably 4 feet maybe, and it just looked like it was closing out, so I just dropped my board and then thought I was going to go through the wave and just skipped across it, and then the wave came over and scorpioned me, and I thought I didn't know what I'd done.
Classic beachy wipeout.
Yeah, and I managed to get myself to shore, and one of my friends was there, and I went home to that old fibro house that I was paying $80 a week for, and sat there for a night, and then woke up the next day and went, I'm not good. Yeah. And went to hospital, and they said, look, you've broken a bone, you haven't severed your cord or anything, you're okay. But give it 6 weeks.
Broken back, no big deal.
Yeah, give it 6 weeks, you'll be right. And I was like, oh, okay. I think it took about 18 months until I was
it's funny. I mean, Ethan Ewing, I'm currently on the World Surf League, broke his back not that long ago at the Tahiti trials. Same deal. They told him he'd be back in probably 12 weeks and he was going to miss the WSL finals. 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, he's surfing in the finals. I'm no doctor, but that's mind-boggling to me how that stuff can happen.
Probably not a good idea, but they've got much better medical than they had.
Get it.
Yeah, this is sort of going back 20 years, and I didn't know at the time. They only found one broken vertebrae, but then some years later they found a second, and so I broke two, and it did take me about 18 months to just get over that, and I'm still not over it. It still goes out every 2 years or so. So you've seen me every now and then. I've had, back problems or whatever, and it's just from that.
Which is, I assume, now sciatic, right?
Yeah, it's like a scar. So there's scar tissue around the muscle, apparently around the vertebrae. So it just goes out every now and then. And I just go back to, I've got a chiropractor. Some people like them, some people don't, but I've got what I think is a special one. And I've been going to the same guys for 20 years, and I just go there, they make it right, and I'm good. Yeah, I'm good for another couple of years, and then something goes again. It's usually when I'm doing something silly these days.
Mate, but please tell me.
So, I didn't get to the rest of it. So, so I went to uni, did uni, met a girlfriend at a uni job. She became my wife, still is, and needed a job.
We're going to talk about fee in detail shortly, by the way.
Needed a job. So came out, and I thought I liked people and behaviour and business. And my family ran a reasonable sized recruitment business, and my dad, I think, always would have liked me to come into the business. So he said, why don't you come and do a contract? And that contract was working on the restructure of the P&O Ports wharf operations after they'd had the Patrick's
in Circular
dispute.
Quay?
No, in Botany. Right. So around the corner. So they've got a big container terminal there. And Patrick's had just done a big wharf dispute around the country where they sacked all their workers and rehired other workers that weren't union.
Right.
And P&O wanted to do that, but not the same way. And so they hired our company.
No small contract.
No, it was big. Yeah. And that was my first. I was only doing I was phone screening all the guys and all that sort of stuff, hiring ex-army people and that sort of thing. But I loved it. And I just met all sorts of different people, thought it was pretty interesting. I started to learn lots about what people did for jobs, and I'd hire some of them, and I'd have to present to all these quite high-level CEOs and present all the candidates and know all about them and all that sort of thing. And anyway, I just liked it. And so I think about 18 months later, I did my first chief executive job where I shadowed another consultant. And then another couple of months later than that, I did my first CEO for myself. And that was in the surf industry. And
what year was that?
That was probably 2001.
So this is still working with your dad?
Yeah, still in that same company. It was a pretty big company then. So it had gone from a family company to a much bigger company. I think we listed on the stock exchange in 2004.
Wow.
So it was owned by banks. And it sort of went from a family company to a 1,500 person, $1.2 billion major privately owned recruitment business.
So when did you then go out on your own? Was that something that was encouraged by your dad?
No, it was.
Or you just felt like it was the right thing to do?
Yeah, I spent about 15 years working for that business, and I grew my own customers. So I started working for Volcom. I worked for FCS. So I've got a niche in the surf industry. So I hire people for the surf industry as well as a bunch of other industries, but I've got an interest in it. So.
Urban surf in particular, which we're gonna dig into.
Yep, urban. Know the Surf Lakes guys. So. Yep, I even got to do some bodyboarding work whilst I went through the other clients that I worked for. So bodyboard companies every now and then were big enough to be able to use a recruiter to help them. So it was good. And I think I went out on my own in 2013.
Right.
So
10 years.
Yeah, it's pretty much 10 years coming up, I think, on the 11th of November.
Not that anyone's counting.
Yeah, I just remembered that was. You kind of forget when you've been in your own business, doing your own thing. But I left after we went through the GFC, and that wasn't really pleasant to my industry sector. And
I bet it wasn't.
Yeah, and then I thought, well, we got through that. I went into healthcare, so I did quite a bit of work in healthcare because it's a recession-proof industry. Surf industry wasn't doing much at that stage, and that took me out of the recession. And I thought, I think this isn't really our family company anymore. I should just do this myself. So set up a business for myself, which I've been doing now for 10 years.
Was that a smooth transition?
It wasn't easy because I'd been in a family business that was 50, 60 years old at that stage. And
But I mean, you obviously had a good reputation. You had a good clientele or a good database of people that you could reach out to fill these things. I guess, would I be right in assuming the hardest thing was probably getting those contracts?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's working for the customers. So in my business, once you're hiring senior people, it's not really about the candidates that you need to fill the jobs. It's about the people who have the jobs that you need to fill. You can find the candidates. I have a researcher that's very good who works with me to find people that I need, and she can find anybody. So the hard bit is finding the jobs, because that's what generates the revenue.
And mate, please, I want to talk about your family. Big family, 4 kids, amazing wife, very talented artist wife. Again, you said in the introduction we were sitting in a shed. We're not really sitting in a shed, are we?
We're sitting in the studio,
Yep.
in inverted commas, which has artwork all around us at various stages of development. But actually, it's the garage that used to house one of my cars. And
If anyone knows artists, they're not very neat, are they, Nick?
no, and Fiona's a watercolorist, so there's lots of jars of little bits of water that have paint and colour and water in them. And
I'm terrified, to be perfectly honest. I don't even want to touch one of those jars.
no, I'm not allowed to touch anything. We've already moved too much in here, Ben.
Yeah.
We could be in serious trouble. But yeah, she is pretty successful at it. She runs a gallery called Sydney Road Gallery, which does quite well. And we have 4 kids and
2 are now young adults, 2 getting close.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So I've got 2 at uni, 1 about to go to uni, and another one still in high school. And 2 of those came to Europe with us.
Yeah.
And in 2012, I took them all out of school and took them to Bali to live at Ulu's. So we lived at Uluwatu for the entire season in 2012, and it was a pretty good season. It was probably 4 feet to 8 feet for the whole 6 months.
Tough gig.
Yeah, and I got there before the seasons had turned, so I got to see it before the season actually hit. And,
Which is probably a good thing.
It was, yeah, because I just had to drive to Nusa Dua. So Bali's an island, right? So it's offshore somewhere all the time.
Yep.
So I just have to drive to Nusa Dua and I'd get offshore waves there. But it was, about half an hour drive, and I didn't know too much. I'd been to Bali a couple of times before, but never really surfed Nusa Dua, so I just drove over there on my little bike and then would sort of peer out and go, oh, it looks okay. It looks pretty good. Reckon it could be 3-4 foot. And, of course, it's quite a long paddle from the beach at Nusa Dua to get out to any of the breaks out there.
Gotcha.
And most of the time it wasn't 3 foot. It was more like 6. But anyway, you make do. And then the seasons turned. And so then I'd just surf Uluwatu and Padang and a couple of other breaks along the Bukit that aren't that well known.
So I need to rewind the clock a little bit. We spoke just before about kind of your early years and obviously that wipeout that led to a broken back. But where did you first start bodyboarding? I guess, how did that happen? Where was that connection? How did that develop? Was there any kind of motivational points that led you to, I guess, getting to where you are now? Because we're going to talk about everything you've done.
Yeah. I'll try and get through it quickly because I don't want to bore everybody. But so my first board was a lightning bolt bodyboard, and my first good board was a Mach 10, which isn't the one that's sitting above your head, but it was like that. I've now got a Mach 10 back. One of my friends gave me one, so that was probably my first good board. But I actually started surfing in Yeppoon.
You're joking.
In North Queensland, yeah. On cyclone swells. Like
This is weird.
Yeah, Yeppoon doesn't have surf.
No.
But it had enough just to start. And so that was where I started on holidays. My grandparents had retired up there and bought a mango farm. And so I'd go and
Hang
pick
on,
mangoes.
they retired and bought a mango farm. So they didn't just retire.
No.
They bought a mango farm.
And a self-contained block of units. in Yeppoon, about 2 kilometres from where Surf Lakes is now.
Yeah, right. Mate, you could have had that prime real estate.
Yeah, there's a street named after me up there because it was on our farm. It's now a big housing development that looks over Great Keppel. It's beautiful. Yep. It's a really nice place. Anyway, that's where I started to surf. And then when I came back home and I was kind of a bit hooked on it, then I'd get the bus down to DY. So I'd surf DY Point.
And DY Point's the kind of the bigger, heavier wave, right?
Yeah. And you'd get dropped in on by everybody because you were just a grommet. And you just learn the ropes.
Yep.
And so that's where I started. And then I found my way over the other side of the hill to Curl. And Curl's just more consistent.
And you've basically been at Curl ever since.
Yep.
Still get caught on a rip, though.
Yeah, as we did today. And we will again tomorrow. I surf quite a lot. I've tried to, blend work with lifestyle, and I surf as much as I can. I've travelled a lot, as you know.
Please, I know what you do, but please tell everyone how your normal day starts.
Okay. I might answer a few emails, but my normal day will start going down to Curl, having a look at what the beach is doing.
Yep.
And working out whether it's worth surfing, and most of the time it is. I can usually find something good in most surf to make it worthwhile.
Diamond in the rough, mate. Diamond in the rough.
And doesn't matter whether you get, 20 minutes or hour and a half. It's just good to be out there, and that starts the day well. And so I'll do that, and then I'll come back in and make the phone calls, do the emails, do all that sort of stuff for work.
I think, most surfers and bodyboarders always follow that same ethos. It's better to surf bad waves than to not surf at all.
I think so.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, comps will teach you that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't have a choice. And but I didn't get into competing until quite a bit later. I just surfed socially, I guess. I played Aussie rules and surfed on weekends.
You're definitely not a full forward kind of guy.
No, I was a forward flank and centre half back. They were my two. Yeah, so I started centre half back and then got the Guernsey
realised you didn't have the size for that, or?
No, I didn't want to do it. Yeah. I wanted to kick goals, and
every kid does.
Yeah, and it took me about 2 seasons to be able to convince the coach to put me up the front, and I had a couple of good seasons doing that, but we didn't go anywhere, sadly. So
today you told me a bit of a story. Essentially a motivation point involving Blockbuster?
Video Easy.
Video Easy.
So I had a university
So this is an intertwined 3-way love story that involves fee and bodyboarding. So
it does.
Go.
Yeah, all right. So needed a job. A friend of mine was working at Video Easy.
So hang on, how old were you here?
20... I think I was about 24.
So you're at uni at this stage?
Yeah. So I know what year it was because it was the year that movie came out that I'm going to get to, which I think was I know it was 97. So I was probably there 98.
VHS days.
Yeah.
DVD days.
Yep. VHS days. And anyway, I would do these late shifts where I'd work 4 till 12 on a Friday and a Saturday. And from 10 till 12, no one really came in. You were just hanging out there.
Just creepy people.
Yeah.
And in the adult film section of the back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was one of those with the little sort of folding doors, and some sheepish looking people had come in and borrow videos they might not have should have bought. But I'd met my wife there. She was doing a second job. So
it wasn't a classic love story. She was the client. You're behind the counter.
Oh, no, I was her boss, theoretically.
Wouldn't get away with that these days, mate.
No, well, she left, very soon after we got together. But, she was paying off her car and so wanted a second job to pay off the car quickly. And so she was working there weekends and nights.
Savvy.
Yep. Always organised. So, so I met her and then at some particular point somebody returned a video and I opened the case because you got to take it out, clean the video and all that sort of stuff. And I went, that's not the video that the cover says. And it said it was the contest. And I didn't know what that was, but I thought, well, I'm here late. You know, it's 10 till 12. I'm just on my own. So I just stuck it in the VHS recorder at 10 p.m. on a Friday and watched Tim Benithan's coverage
contest
of the 1997 pipe comp. And I had no idea what I was watching until it started. And I watched the whole thing from go to woe. I can't tell you how many times I watched it because nobody wanted it. Like, it was a
useless
mistake.
to you, yeah.
And so I just got, after going to uni, doing all that sort of stuff and having another life, really, I got hooked on bodyboarding again in my mid-20s. And that was thanks to Tim Benithan's Surf Flick for covering an amazing bodyboard contest. So
I wonder if that was a genuine mistake on the Video Easy returners' part, or they would, you probably can't remember what they were supposed to return, right?
He's done me a favour. Yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah,
I wonder if he, or otherwise he was like, maybe I want to steal Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and put the contest back in.
He certainly could have done that, but his loss was my gain.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, it's just an amazing contest. And if you haven't seen it, you should see it. Find the video or find footage of the 97 pipe contest. It was pretty amazing. And so I watched that. Just
on repeat.
Got hooked on it. And so then I hit, me and my then girlfriend were together, and I got really into bodyboarding in a much bigger way, I suppose. So I started to travel a bit, went to Bali, down the South Coast, did a number of trips, and thought I should compete. I've never really competed. I should get involved somehow. So I went. I think the BSC store at Narrabeen had opened not that long.
In 1998?
Yeah.
Yep.
Not that long before. And so I went up there and bought a board or something and spoke to Mick Parkhill.
A much younger
Mick Parkhill. And said, are there clubs that go on here? And he said, yeah, we just started one last year. And,
at least he was polite to you.
Yep.
Not like the first introduction he had with Shane, but that's you got to listen to Shane's podcast to hear that one.
Mick means well. He can be a bit gruff to start with, but he's like an old salty sea dog. You get to know him and you love him. And anyway, he said, go and talk to these guys. So I went and talked to this guy, Doug Tuvey, who was running SBC at the time. I just turned up at one of the comps at the start of the year, and he said, and I said, oh, look, I'm a bit older. Do you have a division for guys in their later 20s? And he said, yeah, we were planning on doing that, but we didn't really get the numbers. So just go in the opens. The standard's not that good. You'll be all right. And I was like, oh, okay. I've never competed before in my life, so I turned up at the first comp, and I can't remember exactly who was in my heat, but I know that Dave Winchester, Ewan Donaghy, Max Arendt, Chris James were all in the club and all competing in the opens.
All Groms.
And yeah, they're all young, but they were good, really good. So I don't know what world Doug Tuvey lived in when he was at home surfing, but he was also good. And they could all surf, obviously. So I just got smoked every single event for the whole year, but I kept going. And then the year after, they did set up a senior division, which I won in its first year. And I've kind of been in the club ever since.
Which obviously led you to, I guess, probably your first administrative roles within the bodyboarding scene.
Yeah, so I did. I think I started out as the public officer, they called it. So the person that just does all the forms and all that sort of thing for council. And
the fun stuff.
Yep, I went to all the training programs about company secretarial courses and all this sort of stuff. So you got to know how to run a club. And I would just look after that. And I had a really good president. Then I became the treasurer when somebody else left. And
who was the president at that stage?
Greg Webster.
Yeah.
He's still a mate of mine.
Yeah.
And,
I know Greg.
Yeah, he's a teacher who, his son got into bodyboarding and he quite liked it. So someone conned him into being the president and he stayed for about 8 years. And so he ran it. Matt Pike ran it for a while, who used to edit Movement magazine. He ran it for a couple of years as well. And I was still working with him while he did that. And then I became president in the end and ran it for a couple of years before we set up the ABA.
Yeah. And who's running it now? Is it Clevey?
No, he's moved to the Central Coast.
Right.
Jack Wren is running it.
Right.
So he's a good young guy.
Yep.
Lee Satine ran it before him. So we all kind of help out. Moz, who we might get to later, also helped run the club. We had a group, we had sort of a committee in the end. That was how we wanted to set it up. So it was like a team that ran things. There's always got to be someone who makes the final decisions, but yeah, we were running it together, really, and it still gets run in the same way.
You obviously touched on some pretty reputable names earlier, but I mean, on top of that, who else do you see as this kind of success story out of SBC? I mean, there's two names I want to talk about in Spencer Frost and Guy Willamette that have gone on to do some pretty incredible things outside of bodyboarding.
Yeah.
Ewan as well. I was supposed to try and meet up with Ewan this weekend to potty, but
he's just down the road.
He is. Unfortunately, he is in the Philippines, I think.
Is he?
On a work project. His partner does dive tourism.
Yeah, and he just went to Namibia.
Namibia, yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I still see Ewan every now and then, which is good because we live in the same suburb. But I watched all those guys
develop.
And, so, Dave Winchester he's the prodigal son from Coco. And
it's funny because all of these guys at the same time tied into the BSC team.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
all of them did.
Yep, the biggest and the best retail team in the country, if not the world.
Yeah, there was, they had loads of guys that were really good. Everybody who was anybody in bodyboarding in the Northern Beaches were a part of that team, really. And he had a broader team, so he was then starting to expand out in the Goldie with Lackey and a few others. He was just a really good connector. So he got people together and he was very passionate about the sport. And he and I got on pretty well. And eventually he said, you should just start doing some stuff with the club. They need some help. And so I did. And the club seemed to go pretty well. And then at some particular stage, someone said they needed something done at a national tour level. So do you want to run IBA Australasia? And I think Terry McKenna was running it then. And he was going to run the kite surfing world tour, I think. And so Mick and Julio at Stealth now, but was at NMD, rang me and said, you should run that. And I said, I got a job, like a proper job. I can't just run that. But I could give you some help and advice. And so I'd kind of been preparing myself for that before. I thought I was going to do something a bit more than just run a local club at some stage. So I'd gone to the state titles and the national titles. I came second in the national titles once. I got to watch how they ran them, and I thought I had something to offer. So when Terry did move on, then I went back to them and said, I think I'd like to be involved. I don't think I can run it. I think I need someone else who might be able to devote the time to be able to run it, who's maybe a bit younger than me. But I could set it up so that I think we could run something pretty special around the country. And so that was the start.
Before we dig a little bit deeper into the ABA, just one thing I do want to talk about. I know it's really close to your heart. We obviously surfed curl. That's your home break. Moz, pretty big loss for the bodyboarding community, not just locally. Moz was a big part of our kind of competition structure with the ABA. Mate, he did some great things on the world stage as well. Mm-hmm. He competed at pipe comp.
He did. Yeah. Did a couple of pipe comps. Had shots in various magazines. Riptide was one of them. And came out here to emigrate and to work.
From Brazil.
Yeah, and found his way to the Northern Beaches. And I can't even tell you when I met Moz. But he's been part of SBC since, well, as long as I can remember. And he's always there to give a hand. He's, setting everything up. asking if anybody needs a hand doing anything.
I know as humans and within society, generally, during the loss of someone, we tend to speak in a positive tone. Sometimes that isn't accurate. I feel like in Moz's case, it is. He was that genuine, all-round great guy. Like,
He was, yeah.
he had no fault.
Not really. No, not that, I'm sure the people that knew him really, really well might give you, like his family and stuff might give you something, but no, don't think he did. He was always easy to get along with, always lend a hand. He had an interesting job. His job was flexible, so I'd say I'd see him weekly. So we'd always see each other in the car park here, or sometimes I would go up to Whaley if I thought Whaley was going to be good. He loved Whaley. Whaley was his spiritual home. Curly was like his backstop, because he knew, and I would always tell him that Curly always has waves. It's always good. There's always going to be something at Curly, so you might as well not keep searching, Moz. Just come here. And anyway, he was into surfing and bodyboarding in the end, and did both depending on what the conditions were. And yeah, I surfed with him a lot. So I got to see him competing. He then competed on the national level with the ABA Pro Tour. Saw him at those events all around the country. Yeah, he was pretty committed and really passionate about it. It was just a lifestyle for him. That's what he did. But I miss him. Yeah, he was, yeah.
I mean, and again, there's no such thing as a fitting way to go out, but I can't remember when, within the history of our sport, especially here in Australia, that we've lost someone in a contest.
Yeah, it was pretty unusual. I don't remember any either. And, we'd have risk assessments and
Absolutely.
We had lifesavers organised and all that, just in case something like that happened. But I think what happened to Moz was a medical episode that nobody could have predicted. I don't think he hit his head. He was, according to Joey, who pulled him out of the water, Joey Morton pulled him out of the water. He was under for 30 seconds. He was in at the beach in less than 2.5 minutes, and there was an off-duty nurse on site that just started CPR. So that it was like, from a life-saving perspective, because I'm a lifesaver, it was kind of textbook. And they couldn't do anything.
Just couldn't revive him.
I just think there was some sort of catastrophic medical event that occurred. And those guys did all the best things that they could. There's several guys that helped, tried to help on the day. No one could believe it, because if anyone, you just wouldn't expect it was going to be Moz. He's
a fit guy.
Really fit, really committed, surfed a lot, very experienced. You just wouldn't have thought that it was going to be Moz. So I think something else happened to him. And, like what Fiona said to me was, you'd kind of, if you were him, you'd have to be happy because you died doing something you were really pleased about, and you enjoyed. So it's really hard for the people that are left behind. But, maybe in some ways, apart from the fact that it was way too early, it was not a bad way to go.
And I assume that it's obviously created a significant ripple effect within obviously the broader bodyboarding community, but in particular, like the guys at SBC, it's a big thing to come back from.
Yeah, and it happened whilst they were all there.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't, he wasn't free surfing. He was in a comp. He had a rash vest on.
He had a rash on.
Yeah. So I think it's been a big thing for everybody to get their heads around. And I wasn't here when it happened. I was in Portugal. Yeah. And it was quite hard to be away when that occurred, and be away from all the people in the club that I've had such an association with for decades. But that is what it is.
All right, mate. So we're going to move back on to the ABA. You kind of talked about the lead up, or the offering, or the confidence to do it. You had Julio and Mick and some other guys telling you that there was an opportunity for you to get into it. What happened next? Obviously, my memory's a little bit hazy. The last thing I remember before we kicked things up was you and I ended up in Kiama at a Nationals. I'm not even sure if it was an AGM or an extraordinary meeting.
It's like an industry event, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, so we
I
presented our idea.
Yeah, no, we did.
Well, actually, no, go back.
That was 2013.
How did you drag me into it?
Yeah, so I spent about a year doing some research on what contests looked like, what organisations had done quite well, how they got there. I looked at surfing, obviously, and how the ASP was built, which is now the WSL. I looked at BMX because I thought BMX was a smaller sport that was inside a bigger sport, and I thought that was interesting. I had a look at kite surfing and rollerblading and a couple of others, but I liked the BMX thing and I liked the surfing thing. So I focused on that. You know, how did you create a tour out of an event structure? And with that particular organisation, they did it through clothing companies. So the clothing companies had the money. So I was trying to work out where you follow the money in bodyboarding, and it certainly wasn't clothing. I thought it was board brands, and so I started to look at board brands because it's boards that make the money out of bodyboarding. You know, we've all got loads of boards. There's about 8 of them sitting above your head, and I've got several others all over we buy lots of boards. So we're not
going to talk about our problems.
Your problems. Ben has many boards. So I started to think, okay, it's the board companies. And then I realised after I did a bit more digging, it wasn't even the board companies. It was the distributors of the boards. They were the people that seemed to me to have the money in bodyboarding. So then I started to go to comps. I went to state titles. I competed in state titles, national titles. I went to those state titles, national titles. I went to some AGMs, had a look at how they ran things, and got an idea about how we might do things. And then when we'd heard that Terry McKenna was leaving, we were at a comp at Kiama, and I'd built a proposal for what a new structure might look like, and I presented it to I think it was the IBA Australasia board then. It was basically made up of mums and dads and guys who ran local bodyboard clubs.
But correct me if I'm wrong, and my memory again is a bit hazy. Not everyone in that room were happy with what we were talking about.
No, they definitely weren't. But you just had to get enough to get the majority.
Yep. So
no one's ever all going to agree. You know, you might get some unanimous decisions from time to time, but certainly not in bodyboarding. It's a sport full of individuals, so it's really hard to get a consensus inside bodyboarding and get people together to follow something. Yeah. But anyway, I presented it to them, and I'd like to think that I presented a logical case for how you might build something, and at the end of the day, they agreed, and so the next year we kicked off the ABA, and so we rebranded it. So we changed the brand from IBA Australasia because IBA was a little bit shaky at that stage.
And again, I've spoken about this in previous podcasts. IBA Australasia really had no pulling power because IBA International essentially was bankrupt.
It was.
So they were operating under a label that didn't look good on paper.
Yeah, and it just needed a bit of a new beginning. And we thought it was kind of funny to have a new beginning with an old name, and the ABA was an existing name. Actually, it was done by someone else many years earlier, and we thought we'd resurrect it. And then once I'd had the go-ahead to be able to create this new tour, and we had a name, then I needed to create a brand around it. I needed to get people to help do it all. I needed somebody to run the video. I needed someone to do the judging. I needed someone to run the bloody thing because it couldn't be me. I couldn't spend the time doing it. So then, I spoke to a whole bunch of people in the industry, and people told me people to talk to. And I'd met you once or twice before, and Mick had mentioned, you should have a chat to Ben about that. He might be interested in doing it. And so gave you the story and said, I'm going to build a national comp. We've got basically one sponsor, but I think we're going to be able to get more. That one sponsor was Rebel Sport, which Terry had got. successfully and kept for about 4 or 5 years, maybe longer, maybe 5 or 6. And then we needed more sponsors, because what we were going to do was going to cost more money, because we were going all around the country to do it. And we needed to make sure we had waves that we and bodyboarders would be happy surfing in. And pretty much in every location we picked wedges, because they're fun and then they make for a good spectacle. And it just happened that way, and then we got some local people in each state that we could trust, who could help us deliver.
But I remember in the beginning we had some really good kind of rider representation as well. We had Benny P.
Yeah, we had Ben Player doing videos for us.
Yeah, we had Winnie.
Dave Winchester was our spokesperson. All like everybody who was anybody turned up to our comps. The first one was at D-Bar, and we had Winston McCall, who came
front man of Parkway Drive.
Had most of the pro bodyboarders. So you had Joe Clark, Cade Sharp, all of the pro bodyboarders, and lots of up and coming guys. It was big. We had a pretty good contest set up at that first one, and we got skunked for waves for the first 2 days of that contest window.
Yeah, but then the final day
came through.
Came to the rescue.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I think, was it Cramsey that won that comp?
No, Rollins.
Oh, it was Rollins.
First, yeah,
that's right. He was number one.
Yep.
So Rollins won the first comp. That was good. It was a great experience to do. And then we started to roll that out across the rest of the country and went to South Australia, WA. Did Queensland obviously, and Mystics in New South Wales.
Yeah. So, we could probably speak for hours about what the next 6 years looked like. But like you said, we had some, I'm probably going to come across as very biased here, but we had some incredible event locations.
Yep.
And I'm not just talking about the waves. I mean, the regions, the towns, the people. One of my favourite places to go to, even now outside of a competitive scene, is Port Elliot in South Australia.
Great, isn't it? Yeah, I loved it.
D-Bar, absolutely by far the greatest bodyboarding amphitheatre we have in Australia. It just is.
Yeah.
It is an absolute swell magnet. It's one of the kind of biggest hi-fi surfing and bodyboarding waves we've ever seen.
Yep.
And it also produces some of the best bodyboarders of all time.
So did Mandurah.
Yeah.
So we picked Mandurah because it was getting a lot of press at the time.
Yep.
And it just looked like a great wave. Then we ran Mandurah the first year, and I'd made a fatal error because I hadn't really talked to any locals about when the best time of year would be.
Yeah, and we surfed Pyramids, didn't we?
We ran Pyramids because we ran it in June, and then
which was like a month out or something like that, wasn't it?
Then I rang both Davis and Louis before we did the next year and said, "What do you reckon would be the best season?" They said, January to March. I was like, okay then. And then we had, then the next year Hardy won, and that was an epic comp. I loved that comp. So we ran Mandurah for several years after that. It was really good.
We also had one at the Gas.
Yeah,
in
WA,
which is wild.
It was great. Reintroduced bodyboarding to the Northern Beaches. So did the Northern Beaches Pro at Whaley for several years. That was great.
Also, the last ABA tour event we ran in 2019 before the big bad axe known as the pandemic.
Yep. Yeah.
Came down hard.
Yeah. It was a good comp.
It was. Lily claimed back-to-back women's titles. Lockie won his third in a row.
Yep.
You can't write that shit.
No, they were great competitors. Good people. Enjoyed working with them. We had loads of people do the tour over the years, and it was great to do. It was time consuming and expensive. We had some great sponsors too. So we had lots of industry sponsors. So we had Ben at Inverted, Julio,
World. Mate, we had Mick at BSC.
Shane. We started the Big Wave Awards. So we were concerned at the start that some comps get known as a small wave contest and small wave contest machine. And so, how do we counter that? Well, let's set up the Big Wave Awards. So we'll reward people for surfing big waves as well as small. We can't avoid getting small waves because we only have
It's the ocean.
a few
It's
days
Mother
window.
Nature.
Yeah. We don't have 2-week windows like the WSL, so we just had to get what we get. So
I mean, even the World Surf League gets skunked from time to time. Like
They do,
their
yeah.
event window's 10 days. Look at Tahiti this year. They got nothing.
yeah, Indo, they didn't get great waves in Indo either. So it does happen to them, but it was definitely going to happen to us.
Yep.
So that's just the life of competitive surfing. And I think one thing I do need to say to people is they really need to get used to it. This is life. We surf in big waves, small waves. Comps get run in big waves and small waves. They can't all be run in big waves. So we set up the Big Wave Awards to sort of counter that, I suppose. And I think that went well. Those releases that we were doing that Michael Jennings was filming.
Well, I want to touch on that real quick, mate. Not just MJ, but the team of people, because there are a lot of people that a majority of the bodyboarding population aren't aware of that were a part of what we did for those 6 years.
Yeah.
MJ, by far, is at the top of that list.
Yeah, he was the critical piece to the puzzle, really.
Our creative engineer.
Nothing we did would have mattered because no one would see it without him.
Yep. Digital genius.
Yep. 2 weeks before comps, he'd start releasing clips. He'd have them all set up. I can remember us sitting at comps, and he'd be sitting a bit like you are now with a headset and a laptop, and he was cutting clips while he was talking to us.
Yep.
And then he'd release them, and there'd be like 2 minutes of this amazing footage, and poof, out it'd go.
Yep. And then back behind the lens.
Yeah, and he'd just do that at night. It was amazing to watch.
The man never sleeps.
Yeah, Craig Haddon, did a great job judging. I never really had to worry about what was happening with that. We had operations guys. Terry's an amazing commentator. He really helped us out managing the transition from what we were before to what we are now. He was good at that ops bit. We had lots of work crew, local guys that helped us out.
We had Danny Bycroft. We had Dylan Beach.
Yeah. Dylan was GM for 2 years.
We had
did an amazing job.
Justin in WA. Just so many people that we, again, like you said, didn't have to worry about.
Yeah, the surfing bodies all helped us
absolutely
in most cases. So, Surfing New South Wales were excellent. Surfing WA was like all the surfing bodies really were really good. And they were professional. So we could get them to come in and set up judges and a few other things if we needed them. And they'd just run it, and we wouldn't have to think about some of those things. And there was a whole bunch of other things we had to sort out, from scaffolding for, event prezos to, acquiring all of the materials that we needed to do that. There was creative efforts that were deployed.
Late night projection paintings in your living room.
Yeah, there was that too.
For media backdrops.
Yeah, we did a lot, and we did it on a shoestring, and I think it looked a lot better than the money would have suggested that it was.
Absolutely.
And
like you said, that couldn't have been done without the likes of everyone that contributed to what we did.
Yeah,
everyone played their part.
I really liked doing that. I've spent a lot of my working life, I guess, hiring people to create good teams, but I hadn't necessarily had to do it very often myself. And I think we created one there, and we did it for 6 years, and that was pretty hard in some very difficult circumstances where we weren't getting a lot of money to be able to run the comps, and we ran them year in, year out, all around the country.
So that now brings me to 2019. That year in particular, you kind of took a bit of a step back. I did my very best to take the reins. Didn't do so well, but that's okay.
Okay.
You want to tell us about kind of what was going on there? Like, big deal for your family.
Yeah, so there was lots of things personally that were occurring in the background that had been happening for a year or two, and my wife had a few different bouts of cancer, and it was just enough. I'd run out of the capacity to be able to deliver on it. I hadn't really run out of the passion. I felt like I'd run out of almost like headspace, I suppose, to be able to do it.
Well, it's a pretty natural thing.
Yeah,
to
and
occur,
I knew,
mate.
it was, you were there, so it's hard. And we've had, challenges with, bodyboarders aren't always the kindest to deal with. I love them, I am one, but they're harsh taskmasters every now and then, and they can flame
Heavy critics too.
Yeah, and that gets to you after a while, I suppose. But I was pretty resilient, and I was used to that. And that wasn't necessarily a part of it, but all that sort of stuff plays on your mind, and I guess you just sort of go, I think I just need a break. And and then we hit the pandemic, anyway, and then everyone had a break.
Yeah,
we haven't been able to get things rolling until now. So,
but I think what I want to now talk about is, I guess, what we're looking forward to moving forward. Again, I know it seems like an absolute eternity since the pandemic hit. Yeah, 2019, and we're in 2023. Yeah, in a perfect world, as soon as the borders have opened, we would have got straight back into it. But the reality is that was never going to happen.
No.
People that we relied on heavily to help run these events, also known as investors, they didn't have money. They lost money. So we were not even back to square one. We were behind square one. We were hiding in the shadows behind many, many other industries, trying to get our foot back in the door to start things.
Yeah.
You and I have had some pretty incredible conversations. We always do. They're always proactive and forward thinking. Obviously, I've recently kind of rebranded the ABA as the Australian Bodyboarding League, again, because we learnt, I'm not saying from our mistakes, but we learnt from what we didn't achieve with the ABA.
Oh, we made some, there's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
We made lots, but hopefully you learn from them. And
no one's perfect.
Yeah, and as you and I have always, we've talked about this a lot, but cash is king.
Absolutely.
If you can't, you can have all the great ideas in the world, and we would get people who would come up and, they'd think they're giving us gold by telling us what they think we should do, and their ideas were potentially very good. But if you can't pay for those ideas, or if you can't generate the funding for your own ideas, it's just an idea.
It's pointless.
Yeah.
Going nowhere.
So you need money to be able to back it, and you've got to be able to present a story that gets you the money.
Absolutely.
And we did that enough year in and year out. I think one of the mistakes that we made was we ran it on a shoestring, and we needed more. We had a hard time getting it because we all had other jobs and we were doing it for free, basically. So
we're also heavily relying on, I genuinely believe, the industry too much.
Yeah, we were. And some of them really helped.
Absolutely.
They helped as much as that. So, Ben Wells was like a sponsor from the start. Toby's been an excellent sponsor.
Mick and Karina before their demise.
Yep. Mick was the sponsor. He was the main linchpin. Then there was Julio, Mez. I dealt with Mez directly to sponsor an event or two. There's Chad at Grand Flavour.
Yeah, a whole bunch of other great kind
Hog's Breath.
We had Good Earth. Darren from Good Earth.
Darren.
We had SWS.
Yep. Jason, they're great sponsors, and I appreciated them for everything they did. And what we really needed was, another rebel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need someone who's going to become the umbrella tour sponsor, and they're very difficult to find. And we had some pretty good proposals, and I think we ran good tour. We are in a niche sport, and it is hard to find that kind of sponsor, and everybody's hunting for those kinds of dollars now. Surfing New South Wales are hunting for those dollars, and they're big. They're an Olympic sport.
They're huge.
So it's hard for us to find the money that we need to run the tours we'd like to run. So I think what you're proposing to do is a way of trying to manage a tour that works, that can be funded at a more local level.
Domestically, essentially.
Yeah.
Yep. And regionally. And I guess where we've found success with that already is what we're doing with the first stop of the proposed calendar tour for 2024 is, trying to create and develop relationships with local council and look at what funding opportunities they have.
Yep.
And from there, find out what needs to be done to kind of gain access to that funding, and then use that feedback to essentially better your proposals.
Yeah.
And then go for bigger proposals. Like state governments have got a lot of money to give away, especially for sports that are going to bring people or generate interest in that state.
Yeah.
There's some really weird grants available. I'm not even going to go into those ones, but, essentially evil industries have to give money back.
Yeah. Yep. Paul Vanderboom's been pretty successful at getting some grants for his local clubs.
Yep. So I've been on and off chatting with Paul.
Yeah.
He's a great
some
guy.
people have been pretty successful at getting those. The challenge I think you get with we were a national tour when we were running it, and getting national funding is hard. You can get local funding easier.
It's impossible.
Yeah. So I think it needed a different structure to be able to work and become more sustainable.
Yep.
So, I
on top of that, the reality is that the cost of running these events has gone up. The cost of living has gone up. Industries have gone up. There's no way around that. What you and I used to run an event budget with, that's doubled now.
Yeah, I think it has. And our event budgets were kind of, probably 25 grand.
Yeah. And that also included high quality live webcasts.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it did most of the time. And we were losing money because we were doing it for free.
Absolutely.
So if you were to add additional staff costs in, it wouldn't make money. So then you need to generate more revenue to be able to cover that. And it's hard to do in a niche sport. We are a niche sport. So,
mate, essentially, if I had to put a figure on it, if we were looking for that big corporate banner to cover an entire national tour, and this is just a 3-event tour, right? So
yep.
Tri-series event, it's $150,000.
Yeah.
And that is just covering the operational costs.
That's right.
That is not covering the prize money.
Yeah, exactly.
That is solely operational costs.
Yeah, and then you could create a pretty good one.
That'd be spectacular.
If you had that kind of money, you could. I don't think you can in the current environment.
No.
It's really hard even for... I work for Surfing New South Wales, so I know a little bit about what their events are, and they're having a harder time generating the funding that they want. So as a more niche sport, we're going to find it a bit challenging. So we need to find another way, another solution.
So speaking of Surfing New South Wales, again, like you said, big client within the surfing industry. This is kind of a double-pronged question. Another really big client of yours is Urban Surf.
They are.
Urban Surf, for those that aren't aware, I'm sure everyone's aware, the only operational wave pool here in Australia,
the
which
hemisphere.
is located in Melbourne or Tullamarine Airport.
Yep.
The namesake comes from the fact that it is in an industrial estate with 1,000 jets taking off every hour.
Right next to the airport.
And it's very industrial. I mean, there's shipping container villas, concrete hot tubs. It is what it is. It's amazing. It services a huge market.
It is a wonder of man-made proportions. It really is. You go in there on a Friday night at 8 o'clock, get off the plane, walk over there, and there's people surfing under lights. It's
wild.
Amazing. Yeah.
20 years ago, unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. I know people might have a whinge about, quality of wave or whatever it is, but it's amazing, considering what was available before that. We've done flow riders and, there was the heavy ones that were over in the Middle East or whatever that...
there was the left and the right in Durban.
Yeah.
There's the left in San Diego.
But they weren't the same.
No, of course not.
They were like a reverse wave.
A reverse engineered wave. You had jet water pushing up against a foam mat to create a barrel. But you do the recruiting. Well, done for Urban Surf and their soon-to-be opened second project here in Homebush in Sydney.
Yep, yeah. So I do their senior appointments. Some of them, I don't necessarily do all of them, but...
Which is strange. You've never called me about these senior roles.
oh, look, the opportunity's there, but, I need a wave pool in Johanna, Ben. That's the only problem.
It's called the beach.
It's location.
Yeah, it's called the beach. It's called the beach.
I do work for them, and I work for several surf businesses, but they're a really interesting one to work for. It was like a blend between a surf business and a tech business. They had tech, and so it was this new thing. And the first person that I hired for them was the head of marketing. And
Was that Rupert?
No, it was Hayley Wallace.
Right, gotcha.
So Rupert had worked there previously. Rupert left to start a venture, which is a separate
in WA.
business in WA with the previous founder.
Yep.
I knew the current CEO, Damon Tudor, and Damon and I had met when we were in our 20s, and he'd gone on to a sales and marketing career. I'd gone on to my career, and he came back from the Middle East from a job, and was reintroduced to me by a mutual contact and said, I'd really like to work in the surf industry. And I said, I don't know if I've got the right job. And then he got his own job. Someone who he'd worked with previously worked at Urban Surf or was on the board, and said, would you come in as CEO? And so he started, I think it was like 5 years ago, before the pool had opened. And personally, I think he's done a great job. That pool was shut for 45 of the first 90 weeks of it being open.
All thanks to the pandemic and then the
lockdowns,
South Coast bushfires.
Yeah, yep.
So what that did, the northeast winds blew the smoke and the ash in from the South Coast, New South Wales, filled the pool.
Yep, and can't surf. So, so they shut again. And they had some challenges at the start, and they were the first, so they were certainly first in the Southern Hemisphere.
So there was going to be hiccups.
It was going to be hard,
growing pains.
Yeah, and he did a good job managing the hard. And so I'd hired the head of marketing, Hayley, head of HR, Shelley, head of commercial development, Tyson, several people, and it's been great. I've loved working with them. It's an excellent business, and so they're setting up the Sydney pool. That'll be pretty exciting, and I've really liked working for them. They're a great business, and
you've obviously surfed the pool in Melbourne.
That one, yep, yeah. So I couldn't work with them unless I'd really understood it.
That's fair.
Yep. So I did that, and it's great. Loved it. Surfed intermediate, advanced, and what's the other one? Beast mode.
Yep, beast
expert. Mode. Yep, and liked them all. It's still a bit different from a completely natural wave, but it's pretty good. I thought it was amazing when I first got down there.
I mean, well, you're in good company. I don't think there is anyone that has actually surfed at Urban Surf that can honestly say they didn't like it.
No, I think
if they're going to say that, then maybe surfing's not for them.
Yeah, I think so. It's a pretty unique experience. And there's always improvements that could be made, and, they're changing their tech. So I think they're working on setting up some different settings.
So to clarify, the tech is Wavegarden, which is a European-owned company.
Mm-hmm.
So same tech, new and improved model.
Yep.
I was actually speaking to someone about this recently. I don't think they use the term pistons, but maybe it was pistons. But let's just say there was 6 pistons in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
Let's call it a V6, like an engine.
Yep.
They're saying that the Sydney one's going to be a V8.
Could be.
It's the next step up.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yep. So that's pretty exciting to know.
Yeah.
What's the story with WA? Is that also Wavegarden technology?
It is Wavegarden technology, but it's not Urban Surf. So
different company.
Yeah.
Same tech.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Sydney will be Urban Surf.
Yep.
Is it
and
called
it will
Urban
be
Surf?
Wavegarden. Yeah.
Okay, so the same name? Okay,
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, both the same.
Right.
Yeah, so they've been working pretty hard through similar trying circumstances with supply chain issues, cost of goods going up, rains,
Cost of concrete.
La Nina. They've had lots of delays, but and that all costs money and time. But I think they're on track for March 24.
The surroundings, though, completely different to what's in Melbourne.
Yeah.
This one in Homebush is going to be more like a resort and restaurant / retail precinct. Yeah.
Yep. There's a whole bunch of things that they've got planned for that. An events area. It's a completely so I think Melbourne was the first one.
Yep.
And so now they've had time to be able to refine it. Yeah, effectively it was. And so they've now had time to refine it and work out how they're going to make the second one a lot better. And so what I've seen of the designs look amazing. Should be pretty good.
Which now leads me to my next point, comparative wave pools. As mentioned in my intro, mate, you, I don't know how, somehow have been lucky enough to also sneak your way past security to surf lakes up in Yeppoon.
Yes.
Which I get it. There's that connection and you learnt to surf there, but it's just not fair.
I got kind of lucky.
Yeah, but mate, tell us about surf lakes. I mean, it's not open to the public.
No, it's not. So it was never designed to be. And so their model is a little bit different from Urban Surf's.
A little bit?
Yeah, they're
completely.
Their wave model is different, but their business model is also a little bit different. So they were never planning on commercialising that site. That was always meant to be a prototype. They are actually going to commercialise it now.
Correct.
And I met the guy who's going to do that. But a friend of mine, ex-pro bodyboarder Ben Peasley, was an early investor in surf lakes, and they asked me to go on a surf trip to the Maldives with a bunch of surf lakes guys, and so I went and took another mate of mine from school, and got great waves. Met those guys. Met their engineer Kit Sidwell, who built the machine that creates the plunger. And the wave.
We call it the plunger.
And met Ruben Buchanan, the CEO, who worked with Aaron, the founder. And so I spent 2 weeks on a boat with them, as well as the Brad Lancaster, the creative director for Billabong from the US, his brother Tim, a whole bunch of guys who were great blokes. It was good fun. And Kit, the engineer, said, I know you work for Urban Surf, Nick. I think our wave's pretty good. I reckon it's better. What do you think? And I said, well,
I haven't surfed
I wouldn't know, Kit. I haven't surfed your wave. And then 2 weeks later, I got an invite. Yep. And it's a great wave. I don't think they're two different
to compare
systems. Yeah. Yep. So what I will say is Surf Lakes feels like a wave feels like. Urban Surf feels a little bit different. And that was amazing.
Do you think Urban Surf feels a little pushy?
Yeah. It's probably it's generated differently, and I found Surf Lakes amazing.
Is it a longer wave?
No, I wouldn't say. It might be slightly, and it could be. It depends on how it's built. So the one in Yeppoon, if you look at that one and they do commercialise it, they can change the pitch, the depth of
the
plunger. So it's 16 metres deep.
Sounds like plumbing 101, mate.
Yeah, it only actually goes now about 2 to 3 metres
into the water.
Yeah, they can send it down further, and then it doesn't actually get bigger. Apparently, it gets hollower and rounder,
right,
and slabbier.
Some real kinetic energy stuff.
Yeah, and there were only two waves that were working when I was there.
Because, and again, to paint a picture here, the Yeppoon surf lakes, the big difference to that compared to Urban Surf. Urban Surf is a triangular left and right.
It's like a cone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Surf lakes has waves.
It's circular.
Is it 4 waves?
It's about 4.
Four waves. So either side of the plunger at a 90-degree angle.
Yeah. So I only surfed Ockies left and right, and the other one, which is called the beach, which is where they teach people to surf.
So
that sort of thing.
Define what you're talking about there. Ockies left and right. So I assume that means there's different contours on every side of that plunger.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
And so Ockies left and right is a perfect barreling left and right hander. I could show you the footage. It's great. And then the other one, the beachy, I think is more a longboard wave. It's where they teach people to surf, that sort of thing. There's another one over the other side. I didn't get to the bottom of that one. Then there's the one on the where was I? The north side of the plunger, which is called the Island, and it's a slab.
Right.
I could see it break, but there were some rocks in there, so you couldn't surf it when I was there.
What do you mean there were rocks in there?
I don't know, some stuff has come up from the bottom, so
Right.
so they're having to reskin the whole thing, and then they're putting, I think, accommodation around
Yep.
it, and so you'll be able to stay there, and then you can surf all those waves, and it'll be perfectly blue. Whereas what you can see now
Brown.
is brown because
The soil came up.
the concrete's cracked. Yeah.
Being a complete 360-degree wave pool, obviously similar risk to urban surf. Somewhere is going to be onshore, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
There wasn't that much wind when we were there, so and it does get windy in Yeppoon. I've spent many seasons in Yeppoon.
Well,
it's cyclonic.
It's tropical Queensland,
so when it's a cyclone, it'll be shut. But it could be onshore some places, but I think you could keep it quite protected, because you'd build the lake and you'd build
a biodome.
Yeah, you'd almost build the lake lower than the land around it, and so I think you'd be able to keep it more
wind can't
protected.
be trusted, mate.
Yeah,
I mean, look at the MCG. It's the most enclosed structure in the country.
Still gets wind.
Still gets wind.
Yeah. So I don't know is the short answer. I'm not sure what would happen.
And what's the? So I mean, there's been a fair bit of radio silence on surf lakes since they closed.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously with intentions to open publicly. Do you have any inside scoop? Is there a realistic update to when they might open publicly?
Not
Where
for a
are they
while.
at?
Doesn't sound like it's for a while to me. And they've
Where
got
was-
other sites. So their model is they've been selling licenses for developing surf lakes around the world.
Yep.
And they do have other sites that are actively under construction or in development.
Or planning?
I think some of them are, some of the land has been bought and they're on their way to developing them, one in the States in particular. And so when we were there, someone flew in on a helicopter and just landed on the top of the dirt mound to have a look at it.
Right.
So people are interested in it because they want to add it to their property development to make whatever they're developing more attractive to people to go there.
They're becoming viable real estate. Look at the one. Look at the wave pool in Brazil.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
It's like $1 million buy-in to get yourself a unit.
Yeah, and that's what they were
surfing
trying
rights.
to do at Wiseman's, and that was more a property play. Whereas the guys that I'm working for are just urban surf. They're just the pool. Surf lakes is really just the pool also, but they're always a part of another development, and that can make it challenging to make it a reality.
All right, so next thing I want to chat to you about, mate, some of the surf trips you've been on. You touched on one before, one to the Maldives with some pretty important people.
That was fun. Southern Atolls was good. I've done Hawaii. I watched Ben Player win his first title. He won an air show in Hawaii in the 2000 pipe comp. That was what I watched. I went to pipe in 2000, and wasn't a very good season, to be frank. But I've since gone there in 2007, which was a good season. Was for me anyway. So I've done Hawaii, Indonesia, mainly Bali and the surrounding islands several times. New Zealand, surf New Zealand.
There's one place I want to talk to you about, mate. Namibia.
Oh, yeah. The promised land.
That's a big trip.
Yeah.
I mean, financially, travel time, risk versus reward.
Yeah.
That's a big trip.
Yeah, it is. So if people are still listening, then, maybe you want to hear how that happened. And it does help to know somebody who's been before. And I was sitting in the Sydney Bodyboard Club tent in, I'm going to say, 2016, 17. And Josh Cleve was a member of the club at that stage. I don't know if he was running it then. I did get him to run the club after me because he's really good at doing that. But Josh is South African. There's a whole bunch of South Africans that have come out to
They're
Australia.
everywhere.
They are everywhere, and they're pretty good bodyboarders, and they're really involved. And we had a lot of them in the club. Anyway, I was sitting in the tent at Whale Beach watching a club comp, and Josh sat down and pulled out some footage, and it was point of view footage of him getting the longest barrel I've ever seen in my life, and coming out, and you could just hear him hooting, and then watch him go back into another barrel and do it again, and
It just keeps going.
and I said, I've got to go there, and he leaned over and said, I'm going in 3 days, Nick. Do you want to come?
You've got to say that in your best South African accent.
He doesn't sound that South African now,
I'm
but
going in 3 days, Nick.
Would you like to come with me?
I'm sorry if I butchered that, Clevey.
I'd definitely butcher it. I'm terrible at it. But yeah, and I said, I can't. I've got too many things on, family, commitments, kids, work, whatever.
And 3 days notice.
Yeah, that
Come
was
on, mate. Come on.
But then about a year later, I think in 2018, he contacted me again and said, I'm going to go next year, but this time I'm going to plan it for a year, and we're just going to go when the swell's good. Do you reckon you could do that? And I went, yeah, I reckon I could. And so we waited until August 2019. All year we had about 2 or 3 green lights, maybe orange. They were orange lights, really. And then it was like, the swell's not looking good. No, we're not going. And then in August we pressed the button and went.
How much notice did you have before you went in that?
About 2 to 3 days.
No way.
Yeah. And so
was Fee aware of this?
Yeah, she knew.
Okay, great.
Yeah, she knew for the whole year that at some stage I might go and I'd get no notice.
It's like being called up for war.
Yeah, it's awesome. And and there were about 9 of us. So there was me, Dan Reynolds, and Marty Newman, and Josh from the club, and there was a bunch of other surfers. Tristan Roberts was there. There were some pro surfers as well. I met guys that I still know now when I was over there. A bunch of Avalon guys, Huey Morris and a couple of others who surfed a lot, who knew Josh. And we just, had 3 days, packed and went. And you don't get a lot of time, so the flights are expensive. He knew where to stay, so you stay just on the edge of the desert at Walvis Bay. And then you get these, we didn't have many options for 4-wheel drives, so we got the equivalent of Hyundai iX35s, and we would just drive them out into the desert at 3:30 in the morning, and they'd wake us up. We'd get up, we'd stuff all our stuff in the car, and out we'd go into the desert. It's still dark, still stars out when you got there, but you could hear the wave,
roar.
Cracking on the beach as it was going down. And then the sun started coming up, and it was misty. Still couldn't see it very much. Then once you got to see it, the first day was about 3 foot.
So what's it like at 3 foot?
Awesome.
Still the same shape?
Yep, still exactly the same.
Is it slower?
No, it's
same pace.
Not as far, not faster, not slower. Same. Just smaller.
Yep.
And or this swell it was. Some swells it changes, but then it got to 6 foot plus on the next day, and that was pretty challenging. I think some waves might be smaller, but
what's the period? Like what are we talking?
Pretty long.
Right.
So, yeah.
So quite a long wait in between. Like
you've got time, but there's a massive rip running the whole way along.
Yep.
So the minute you're paddling out, you're
moving.
running, and so which
it's
is good
like
because
Curl.
but you're also running over the wave. You actually want to run down because you don't want it to break in front of you. Really, it's not fun. So you're just catching waves all the way down the coast and until you get to the seal colony, and then you need to get off because there's a big closeout at the end.
And maybe another big thing.
Yeah, there's probably lots of big things, but they only eat seal. So
so far,
only little seal because they can. It's like a delicacy. Why would you make life hard for yourself? That's what I'd like to think anyway.
Yep.
They don't need to.
Positive thinking, Nick.
Yep. They
Great.
don't need to look any further. So yeah, that was a pretty amazing trip. So we flew in. You get out of the airport at Windhoek, which is the capital of Namibia, and I saw baboons running across the road in front of our cars. About the first 10 minutes out of getting out of the airport. I'd see jackals running down the beach. They were going to get the seals.
The proper experience.
Yeah, it was amazing. Foxes, onyxes. It was just an incredible experience. The wave's one thing, and it is an amazing wave.
Cold water?
Yeah. 4.3s.
4.3?
Yeah. Not quite ice cream headache. I reckon South Oz is colder in some of those
Okay,
concerts we
so
did.
still long sessions.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. You're just like, we're walking a lot because you've got to walk all the way back. You're not allowed to get picked up. So
What do you mean you're not allowed? Is that the rule?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, cars aren't going to get you. You're walking back the kilometre or two.
What-
Whenever
what-
you get off.
What if a car's passing? Is that frowned
no
upon?
cars are passing. Yeah,
Okay,
they
because
don't go
everyone's
down.
there.
Yeah, and the seal colony's down there. You're not allowed to go that way to the seal
Gotcha.
colony. You're just walking
I'm
back.
just taking notes here, mate.
Yeah, but you're watching guys getting the waves of their life whilst you're coming back. It's magical. And Namibia is a great country. It's
So,
pretty. It's not as remote as it sounds.
beatdowns. I mean, I've read some pretty horrendous stories
they
about
weren't good.
beatdowns at that place.
Yeah, they weren't fun. I don't know. I've had worse. I've had better. I was so excited about doing it that I'd take whatever it gave me and get up and do it again. It was just
Well,
so
you're
good.
not going to take a beating and call it a day after
No, and it
putting in the
pushes you
effort to get
in.
there.
So it's not, it's not really heavy, deep water. You're not a long way out. You know how close to, it's still hectic and you're still getting pummeled quite hard, but you're fairly close to shore. So,
But I mean, there's been some pretty bad stories of back and spinal injuries to come out of Namibia.
yeah. Oh, there's definitely the possibility of
You're
that.
in a long way from help.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that wouldn't be easy. I wouldn't like to get injured there. It's a bad place to be injured. It's a long way from help. And there's every possibility that could happen, especially as it gets bigger. I thought once we got, 6 foot was pretty big. But some of those more recent swells have been bigger. And you wouldn't like to get slammed into the sand and have to get lifted out somehow. It would be hard to get out of there. But
And expensive.
it doesn't happen very often, surprisingly. It doesn't seem to, anyway. So I think most people who go there are reasonably experienced, so they're careful, I think.
So is Namibia at the top of your surf trip list?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it close?
It's pretty much at the top.
And where to next?
I wouldn't say that it's my favourite wave because it's quite fickle and hard to get to. And my favourite wave's Padang.
Yeah, all right. Also a left.
It is also a left. Yeah, I actually like rights more than lefts, but that
Sure,
wave.
mate. I didn't see you get it right once today.
I
Girlie.
didn't get it right once. Yeah, that is true. But yeah,
I might have burnt you on a couple.
you might have. It might have been my. I thought we were going to go for the double synchronized roll. That was my plan. Like synchronized swimming. We could invent a new genre for the tour.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, not with us either. But yeah, I really liked. I loved that whole experience. The whole trip of going to Africa and surfing Namibia was an amazing thing to do. And if you get the chance, viewers, you should just do it. But you kind of need someone to ask you. It's not a place you can just go to and go, yeah, I'm going to go and surf Skeleton Bay. It just doesn't work that way. You've got to find someone to go with.
So you're throwing Clevey under the bus here?
Yeah, I'm not saying everyone should go and knock on Clevey's door, but they should find another Clevey and work it out. He's been going a long time. He is very experienced. He knows exactly when it's going to break, where to stay, all of those things. So, it is helpful to have someone who knows what they're doing.
Gotcha. Mate, and my last question before we get into the quick fire round, where do you see bodyboarding going forward here in Australia? I mean, you've sat on the top of the shelf for a very long time in terms of making things happen. Obviously, you're not directly involved with any big projects at the moment. In saying that, I mean, your wife told me this morning that you've got itchy feet and you want to get back involved. What do we need to do? I mean, you know what we're doing, but What do we need to do?
Yeah. Well, what you're doing isn't bad because I think it breaks it down from the national comp into...
We're cutting back on the overheads.
Yeah, but you're also being able to possibly gain access to other government money that we couldn't because we're a national sport and we're too small. Yeah. So the Australian... to become a national sporting organisation, you have to have a certain amount of participants and they all have to be registered, and then you can get access to government grants if you get to that point, but it requires a lot more organisation than bodyboarding is currently capable of. And so to be able to break it down into almost like a state-based event structure is probably a good way to start trying to get more funding, and I think we need government funding to be able to do it.
And look, again, and I've spoken about this in other reps that I've recorded, the other key goal for us by doing this, by putting it back in the hands of the state organisations, is generating that involvement back at grassroots level. Yep. Because when we ran the ABA tour, and I say this in a positive sense, it was kind of just our team. We didn't have we had some support back at state level.
Yeah. Yeah, we had Jasper in South Oz and some of the guys in WA, and we did, but we weren't as connected to the grassroots as I would have liked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And if you could create that connection, that would be a good way of being able to solidify a structure that might work. Comes back to the same thing though. Cash is king.
Our vision was to create a pathway for success through competitive bodyboarding. And to create that pathway, you got to start at the bottom.
Yeah.
You got to start at grassroots to state, state to national, national to pro.
And we were having a crack at that with the pro junior, and we did recognise that we needed to do that, but we could always do more. And so I think the philosophy that you've got is right. We just need to be able to work out whether we can get the funding through it. And once you work that out, once you get the right partner, because what you're also actually trying to do is get the right partners to partner in an event for you.
Absolutely.
And you need motivated, passionate people to do that, who are also on board with your philosophy. So they can be motivated and passionate, but if they're not on board with where you want to go, they're just going to go and do their own thing.
Of course.
And there's a lot of that in bodyboarding, and it's really hard to herd everybody together to a common goal to achieve something. And I think that's the thing we've probably found the hardest over time, or I think I did, was getting everybody involved in doing that. And
well, like you said, there's so many passionate individuals that just have different visions.
Yeah, and they may not be bad, but you've got to be able to execute the vision.
Exactly.
And, if you don't, it's just a dream.
All right, mate. So we are going to wrap it up with some quick fire questions.
Righto.
Just to essentially peel the layers back a bit more on you.
All right then.
Mate, favourite band?
Oh, geez. Alice in Chains.
Right.
Yep, like grunge.
Favourite song by Alice in Chains?
There's several. I could go easy and go the Rooster because you put me on the spot. But yeah, there's probably a couple of others.
These are all about putting you on the spot.
Yeah. Anyway, and they're meant to be rapid fire, so let's just go Rooster.
Favourite film? This is just generic film. This does not have to be surf orientated.
Shawshank Redemption.
Gotcha. Favourite line from the film? You can just go pass.
Yep, I'm going to have to pass because I know it, but I can't remember it off the top of my head now.
This one's a tricky one because I've personally seen how many of these items that you have in your life. Favourite car?
2004 HSV GTO Monaro.
Which you don't have anymore.
No, but I did.
What do you have right now, Nick?
2016 500 kilowatt Roush Mustang, 2014 325 kilowatt SS Commodore, 76 Combi, 2006 Mini, a 2017 LDV. I think that's it.
And a boat.
Yeah. It's only a little boat, but yeah. I've got too many. If anybody wants a car, let me know. Yeah, some of them are on the market.
What's your favourite? Like, out of what you have now, what's the favourite?
Out of the cars.
Out of what you got now. Is it the Commodore or is it the Mustang?
Look, nostalgically, I'd have to say it's the Commodore. It's Australia's last car, and it was a beautiful car.
I've enjoyed driving it.
It's pretty fun.
Favourite TV show?
Do we watch those anymore?
Not really.
Well, so if we include
A Country Practice?
Yeah, the podcasty version things, not podcast, the digital versions. Jeez, I don't know.
Yeah, it can be Netflix shows or whatnot.
Yeah. Stranger Things was good. Like that.
Yeah.
Kids like that.
Favourite bodyboarding film?
You know what it's going to be.
The Contest.
It's The Contest. Yep.
Favourite bodyboarding film section?
Oh, jeez.
Was it from The Contest or was it something else?
Well, that's different. Yeah. It would probably be, I know. Surfy Tum 3, Ryan Hardy.
Is that
section,
how you pronounce it?
Tahiti. Yeah, I think so.
I've got no idea how to say that.
I think it was the Ryan Hardy. I think that was the time Ryan Hardy, when he was really young, went there with Ben Holland, and it was massive. And I've got that on VHS somewhere.
So do I.
There you go.
Parkhill just gifted me like 40 VHSs for my birthday, and I was like, "What are you doing?"
You see those black things over there?
They're full.
Adam Ware has given me like heaps of Riptides, heaps of videos as well.
Yep.
I've probably got the same thing that Parkhill gave you.
It was hoarders just offloading their junk. Have you ever been mistaken for someone famous?
Yes, I got mistaken for Neil Finn one time when I was young doing work experience in an ad agency.
Did you act upon it?
No, and I can't even understand I don't even look closely, remotely like him. But yeah, that's the one I remember.
First board, you already mentioned this.
Yeah, the first real board was the Mac 10.
Yep. Favorite wave?
Padang. Has to be, hands down.
Favorite surf trip?
Namibia.
We covered it.
Yep.
Favorite move?
Air reverse, if I can ever do them. I like them.
You've been working on your air sections lately, haven't you?
I'm having a go. Yep. I'm getting old, but I can still get taught new tricks.
Yeah. Definitely an old dog, though.
Yep.
And last one, mate. Favorite board? If there's too many, you can mention them.
Look, I've had lots over the years, but yeah, the most recent ones are always the ones that stand out. So I've had...
Well, tech's come a long way with foam.
I've had custom NMDs. I had an NMD made for me to Brad Hughes HB specs. Yeah.
Nice.
In colours that I wanted. That was pretty amazing. I got that because of a recruitment job that I did for someone.
Fun fact, I've been waiting on a response from Hughesy to come on the potty.
Oh, yeah.
So if anyone else wants to poke Hughesy...
So there's Hughesy's board right above you, and that is a Tricore HB Hughes model, and I use those exclusively through my whole trip to Ulus and Padang. I even picked one up at Mez's house.
Hands down, one of the most underrated bodyboarders in Australian history.
Yep. He was excellent.
Look, no wrongdoing of him whatsoever. He was in this era, part of the Tension crew, right?
Yeah.
Which was one of the most influential eras of bodyboarding here in Australia.
Yep.
Look at the talent pool that was in that.
Yeah,
right?
It was amazing. Yeah.
Whitey
did a great job.
Yep.
Because he was just into it.
Yep.
You know, he loved it. I looked through one of those old riptides that I got from Wary the other day. So Adam Ware used to distribute HB.
Sure did.
So he gave me all this stuff, and in one of those riptides was a photo of a very, very young, up and coming Chris White at one of the state titles comps in
No
WA.
way. Yep.
Yeah, and so he was pretty into it from quite a young age, and yeah, obviously it created the whole movie series, and that went really well.
Tension 11 in the making.
Yeah, if I was, I could mention Tension 3 and 4. They were the ones that I had. I didn't actually have Tension 1, but I bought 3 and 4 and loved those as well. There's so many videos and so many sections. Hawaii Vacation, he did that too.
Mate,
that was
the
great.
intro to that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I feel like saying it was a pisser because it literally was.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that was great. But yeah, you asked about favourite board. So, I borrowed a board from a friend of mine, which was a Stealth Bearhead, which I think was the one that Stoney used to ride before he, probably got his own pro models or whatever. And it was way thinner than it should work for me. I don't usually use thin template boards. And it had these concave rails, Vaxtrax rails, I think they're called. And so just at the very end of the board, the rails just got scalloped out like they were done by a plane. And there was something about that board that just worked for me. And I've got 3 of them now. I'm so fearful that I can't get any of them.
So they're not making them anymore?
I'm scouring Facebook Marketplace to get others to keep them so that I can keep riding them for many years to come. I've got about 4 of them, and every now and then they pop up and I just get them.
Right, so if anyone on Marketplace has got one,
I might pay some good money.
Nick will pay top
Pretty
dollar.
good money for it. Yep. Yep. I love those boards. They changed my surfing life. And they were great for me. There's been loads of them. I've ridden all of them. I know lots of bodyboard makers now, and I liked science boards. Loved Mantas when I was young. They were Australian made. That was great. Yeah, there's loads of them, but the Stealth Bearhead is the one that stands out for me now.
All right, mate. Well, that is done and dusted for us. I've got no further questions, Your Honour. Thanks, mate.
No worries. Hope it was worthwhile. Thanks, viewers. I don't know if you get anything of value out of it, but hopefully it inspires somebody to do something. That's what I got out of some people that I listen to from time to time. So,
mate, obviously I value your friendship dearly. We've done some pretty amazing stuff together.
Yep.
I know we're going to do more. So I can't wait.
We're about to do some tomorrow in the rips of Coco. Get those calves ready, mate.
Mate, they were burning this afternoon, I'm not going to lie. Once again, big shout out to everyone that makes this podcast happen. Obviously, apologies from Shano and Watto for not joining me on this journey. But thank you to Michael Jennings and Sam Watson for production and editing. Rob Porteous and his band Remote for the music. Obviously, Marky Britton for doing some of the social stuff behind the scenes as well. Again, thanks for everyone to listening. And remember to stay tuned for our next step. Just download us wherever you find your podcasts. See you later.
Cheers, viewers.